On June 27th, the Austrian X Corps under Glabenz achieved the only victory for the Austrians during the entire war by successfully repelling the Prussian I Corps led by Bonin. However, Glabenz's position became untenable due to the Austrian defeat at Wiesekau and the advancing Prussian Guard Corps towards Eipel. Despite the circumstances, the situation could have been worse. To the west, Prince Friedrich Karl's First Army deviated from orders, neglecting to swiftly move eastward to support Crown Prince Friedrich Wilhelm's Second Army's advance through Nachod, Eipel, and Trautenau. Instead, he turned south with the intention of encircling the Austro-Saxon Iser army at Münchengrätz. The following day, he would score a victory, but it was meaningless for the greater war effort. The risk was not worth the reward. Meanwhile, in Josefstadt, Benedek and his aide-de-camp General Gideon Krismanek spent June 27th observing the intense battles unfolding on their northern flank from the fortress ramparts. While they were alarmed by the scale and intensity of the conflicts, they felt compelled to continue their westward march towards the Iser. Benedek, urged on by Krismanek, was eager to fully commit his forces against the 5 corps of the Prussian Elbe and the First Armies by joining Klam's Iser army at Glitschin on the 29th. In an attempt to mitigate losses, he ordered Archduke Leopold's 8 Corps to join forces with Ramming at Skalitz. Towards the end of the 27th, a staff officer suggested reinforcing Skalitz, but Krismanek, deeming it too late to divert troops from their assigned marching routes, expressed his resignation. He reportedly muttered, "What can I do? It's too late. Everyone should just continue on to Josefstadt." Krismanek and Benedek made the strategic decision to concentrate their main attack at Glitschin on the 30th. They acknowledged the peril of pursuing the Second Army into Silesia while facing the threat of Prince Friedrich Karl's forces disrupting Benedek's lines of retreat. Considering these factors, Krismanek and Benedek reached a consensus to leave Glabenz and 2 corps stationed at Josefstadt on the 28th, with the purpose of impeding the advance of the Second Army. Meanwhile, the majority of the North Army would continue its westward flank march. At Trautenau, the intention was for Glabenz to establish contact with the Second Army, engage in battle, and subsequently disengage to return safely to Josefstadt. This approach aimed to minimize risks and avoid the need for a time-consuming rescue operation. After setting up camp at Trautenau on the 27th, Glabenz realized that he had lost valuable time. Although he did not receive specific orders for the following day, the successful advancement of the Prussian Guard and other corps compelled him to retreat to the secure Elbe line at Josefstadt. However, initiating the escape proved to be time-consuming, as there were delays in getting his trains on the road and his troops retrieving their backpacks. It was not until 8 a.m. when Glabenz himself finally left Trautenau, but by then the Prussian Guard Corps was already in close pursuit. As his march column reached Burkersdorf, approximately 5 kilometers away, the 2nd Guard Brigade, leading Prince August's 1st Guard Division, spotted them while closing in from Staudenz. The physical condition of Glabenz's troops was severely strained, as the Guard Corps had covered a distance of 50 kilometers within a span of 2 days. The approach to Burkersdorf from Eipel was particularly arduous, involving a narrow dirt track, followed by traversing through seemingly endless meadows, which further drained their energy. Glabenz had anticipated the arrival of the Prussian Guard, although he did not expect them to reach his location so swiftly. Fortunately, he had already positioned 3 artillery batteries at Burkersdorf, having trained them to face east. in order to secure his last remaining escape routes to the Elbe, namely the roads from Burkersdorf and Hohenbrück, leading west to Pillnikau, Glabenz made a hasty maneuver to the left. He deployed the Knebel and Mondel brigades, which had previously been moving southward, in a protective half-circle formation facing east. Specifically, Mondel took position on the left at Neurognitz, while Knebel positioned on the right at Burkersdorf. He then dispatched Grivick's brigade. Despite being devoid of any cavalry and having suffered significant damage from the preceding day's events, on a mission to flank the vanguard of the Guard Corps by advancing from the rear through Radek. Glabenz managed to position 64 guns, all aimed directly at the Prussian Guards, before they could fully engage. While the steady barrage from the 10th Corps artillery held the Prussians in check for an hour, the 2nd Guard Brigade successfully broke through and reached Burkersdorf by 9:30 a.m., launching a fierce assault on the elevated terrain leading to the village. Simultaneously, Glabenz redirected the majority of his corps onto the westward road to Pillnikau, while leaving behind a single regiment in Burkersdorf to impede the advancing Prussian forces. These soldiers, comprising Germans and Czechs from the Lower Silesian 1st Regiment, inflicted substantial casualties upon the Prussian Guards, who were compelled to traverse 400 meters of exposed ground in order to capture the village. During the final approach, the Prussian Guards endured relentless shellfire and targeted salvos, resulting in the loss of numerous guardsmen and every company captain leading the charge. While the Austrian 1st Regiment gradually conceded ground in Burkersdorf, Glabenz's Knebel and Mondel brigades dispersed across the fields toward Pillnikau, leaving behind a substantial number of unharmed prisoners. As the intensity of Austrian fire waned, an increasing number of disoriented Prussian guards stumbled into Burkersdorf. Their impulsive rush to encircle Glabenz led them to engage in a frontal bayonet assault, causing casualties reminiscent of Austrian-style warfare. 18 officers and 478 men were left lying on the battlefield. The time was approximately 10 a.m. Subsequently, Knebel's 1st Regiment relinquished control of Burkersdorf and joined Glabenz's forces as they moved towards Pillnikau. Under the cautious leadership of Prince August of Württemberg, an energetic pursuit by the Prussian forces was deemed impractical, as the majority of the Guard Corps was still en route from Eppel. Furthermore, to everyone's surprise, Bonnen would not return to Trautenau until the following day. Satisfied with the belief that Glabenz had been defeated, the 1st Guard Division halted in the fields between Burkersdorf and Soor, where they set up their cook fires. As the afternoon progressed, in order to pass the time, curious guardsmen scavenged through the abandoned spoils left by the panic-stricken Austrians on the Josefstadt road. These included caissons, food wagons, and Glabenz's entire cash reserve of 10,000 silver florins. Glabenz was compelled to forego his planned retreat on a well-established hardened road and instead navigate through the soft fields behind him. Remarkably, he only lost 2 cannons during this hurried maneuver. He successfully led the 3 brigades under his command, Knebel, Mondel, and Wimpfen, to safety. Unfortunately, Colonel Grivick's brigade was doomed due to Glabenz's swift retreat. Messengers failed to locate Grivick's brigade, and at noon he found himself alone in the wilderness southeast of Trautenau, completely unaware of the developments in Burkersdorf. Following his original orders, Grivick continued his march 3 kilometers south to Radek, intending to face northeast and confront any Prussian forces approaching from the Appel road. Erroneously assuming that the artillery barrage pounding Burkersdorf was due to the arrival of Austrian 4th Corps batteries reinforcing Glabenz, the Prussian brigade fell into a trap. With his 5,000 hungry men, he found himself caught in a fog of ignorance and unfavorable circumstances. By chance, Grivick's brigade stumbled upon 4 Prussian rifle companies dispatched as a vanguard for reconnaissance. Thus began an hour-long engagement where 4 Prussian rifle companies faced off against an entire Austrian brigade, managing to hold them at bay. Due to the absence of intelligence from cavalry scouts, Grzywicz remained uncertain about the size of the Prussian force he had encountered. Instead of simply pushing aside the Prussian battalion and continuing his march, Grzywicz made the decision to defend Rudersdorf. His aim was to divert the main attack of the Guard Corps toward himself, buying time for Glabenz and the rest of the 10th Corps to move southward towards Josefstadt. However, Grzywicz was unaware that Glabenz had deviated from the Josefstadt road, and Glabenz himself was unaware of Grzywicz's presence in Rudersdorf. Through the use of horn and drum signals, Grzywicz managed to communicate the change in the battlefront to his scattered regiments, repel the Prussian battalion and seek refuge in the fortified farm buildings of the village along with 7 infantry battalions. It was only when the Prussian Guards opposite him refused to launch an attack that Grzywicz realized he had been facing a smaller reconnaissance party rather than an entire division. At 1 p.m., the Grzywicz brigade resumed its cautious advance. At this point, the Prussian battalion facing them had received reinforcement from another battalion, prompted by the sounds of fighting at Rudersdorf, while Grzywicz's skirmishers meticulously searched the dense meadows to the south of Rudersdorf. They were suddenly ambushed and overwhelmed by a formidable force of 2,000 Prussians. As the Austrian Jager hastily retreated to Rudersdorf, elements of the 4th Guard Brigade swiftly pursued them, subjecting Grzywicz's line infantry to heavy fire. Despite still holding a numerical advantage of 2-1 over the Prussians in his vicinity, Grzywicz found himself unable to make any progress against their advanced needle rifles. Consequently, he issued orders for his men to withdraw to the safety of Rudersdorf, where the battle persisted in a fierce house-to-house struggle. Reflecting on the situation later, Grzywicz expressed his desperate need to establish communication with Glabenz, but the absence of cavalry and the incapacitation of his adjutants, along with the loss of most of his staff officers at Trautenau the previous day, left him in a dire predicament. Matters soon deteriorated further as 3 additional Guard battalions arrived and executed a successful flanking maneuver, causing panic among his Polish 23rd Regiment. His efforts to organize the retreat were cut short when he too was shot and fell from his horse. Left without a leader and encircled by the Prussian Guard Corps, Grzywicz's demoralized brigade surrendered. In the ensuing events, hundreds of men were killed, hundreds surrendered, and hundreds more sought refuge among the rows of crops or escaped into the nearby woods. Only a group of approximately 1,600 Austrian stragglers managed to navigate through the night, driven by their fear of being detained in Prussia's Baltic prison camps. These traumatized survivors eventually rejoined the North Army. However, out of this group, only 600 individuals were deemed fit to participate in the upcoming Battle of Königgrätz, taking place 1 week later. Burkersdorf marked the continuation of the conflict that unfolded at Trautenau, making it essentially a second battle in the series. As Württemberg's cavalry pursued the retreating troops from Grzywicz's brigade, some 30 kilometers to the east, an even more significant and pivotal battle unfolded at the small market town of Skalitz. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please leave a like, it really helps out the channel. If there is a topic, battle or person you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and you want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 per month, you will already gain early access to all my videos without any in-video advertisements. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.